Princess Kira stood before the massive memorial wall that stretched across the entire plaza. The morning sun cast long shadows through the crystal spires of the capital city, making the engraved names shimmer like stars. Thousands of soldiers from dozens of worlds had given their lives in the Great Liberation War. Now, 3 months after victory, their names would live forever in this sacred place. The war had lasted 7 brutal years. The Hegemony Empire had controlled half the galaxy with their iron fist and advanced weapons. They treated other species like slaves, taking resources and destroying entire planets. But somehow, against all odds, the alliance of free worlds had won. Kira walked slowly along the wall, reading name after name. Her violet eyes moved across the crystalline surface, taking in each sacrifice. Some names belonged to her own people, the Veldari. Others came from the peaceful Zen traders, the warrior Orcs, and many more species. But the largest section belonged to humans. Humans were newcomers to the galaxy. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. Most species had thousands of years of space travel experience. Yet these young humans had become the backbone of the resistance. They fought with a determination that amazed everyone. At the center of the memorial stood a special section. Here, the names were written in pure gold instead of crystal. These were the greatest heroes, the ones whose actions changed the course of the war. Kira stopped when she reached the largest name of all. Commander Ben Torres, Hero of the Outer Rim. The letters were twice as large as any other name. Below them, smaller text told the story. Torres had led the final assault on the hegemony stronghold at Kepler 7. His tactical genius and personal courage had broken their last line of defense. The victory there had ended the war and freed billions of people across 7 star systems. Kira stared at the name, feeling something stir deep in her memory. Torres. Ben Torres. Something about that name felt familiar, like a half-remembered song from childhood. She tried to think where she might have heard it before. Amazing, isn't it? Kira turned to see Minister Vex approaching. The elderly Veldari official had served her family for decades. His blue skin showed the wrinkles of age, but his eyes remained sharp and intelligent. The human commander? Kira asked. Indeed. They say he was the greatest military mind of his generation. Perhaps of any generation. Vex stood beside her, also looking up at the golden name. He understood something that none of our generals could grasp. The hegemony fought with fear and hatred. Torres taught us to fight with hope and unity instead. Tell me about him, Kira said. Vex smiled. Where do I begin? He was only 32 years old when the war ended, but he had already become a legend. Born on Earth in one of their agricultural colonies. Nothing special about his background. His family grew food for the local settlements. How did a farmer become a great general? He enlisted in the Human Defense Force when he turned 18. Showed remarkable ability in tactics and leadership. But what made him special was not his intelligence. It was his heart. Vex paused, choosing his words carefully. Torres never left anyone behind. In every battle, he made sure to protect not just humans, but all species fighting alongside them. Kira nodded slowly. Stories of Torres had spread across the galaxy. Even on her homeworld, far from the front lines, people spoke of the human who fought for everyone's freedom. The Battle of New Singapore, Vex continued. Torres held his position for 3 days while evacuating civilian populations. Half his force was wounded, supplies were running low, but he refused to retreat until every family was safe. I remember hearing about that battle, Kira said. My father said Torres saved over 2 million lives. 2.7 million, to be exact. And that was just one battle among dozens. Vex gestured toward the memorial. Each of these names represents someone Torres tried to save. He succeeded more often than anyone thought possible. Kira reached into her ceremonial pouch and pulled out a small wooden object. It was a carved bird, no larger than her palm. The wood had been polished smooth by years of handling. She had carried it everywhere for the past 20 years. "What is that?" Vex asked. "A sparrow," Kira said softly. "It was a gift from long ago." She held the carving up to catch the sunlight. For the first time in years, she examined it closely. On the bottom, barely visible, were tiny letters carved into the wood. They were in human script, which she had learned to read as a child. BT. Her heart began to race. Ben Torres. Could it be the same person? Princess. Vex noticed her sudden change in expression. "Are you well?" "Minister Vex, I need to access the historical records. Specifically, I want to learn about Commander Torres' early life." "Of course, Your Highness. But may I ask why?" Kira closed her fingers around the wooden sparrow. "I think I might have known him once." The palace archives were located deep beneath the royal quarters. Ancient computer systems stored millions of documents from across Valdari history. Kira had spent countless hours here as a student, learning about her people's past. Now she sat before a holographic display, searching through human military records. The information about Ben Torres was extensive. His service record, battle reports, medal citations, and personal history filled hundreds of files. She found what she was looking for in his childhood records. Benjamin Torres, born on Earth Colony 7, agricultural sector. Parents, Maria and Carlos Torres, crop specialists. Education, local settlement schools through age 16, then military academy. But there was more. Between ages 8 and 12, young Ben had lived in the diplomatic quarter of Earth's capital city. His family had been selected to provide agricultural consulting to the embassy district. During this time, he would have been in regular contact with visiting diplomatic families. Kira's hands trembled as she read. 20 years ago, when she was 8 years old, her father had served as ambassador to Earth. The Valdari embassy was located in that same diplomatic quarter. She remembered those 2 years as some of the happiest of her childhood. Earth was so different from her homeworld. The humans lived closer to nature, in smaller communities. Children played together in open spaces instead of formal palace gardens. For the first time in her life, Kira had been allowed to make friends her own age. She remembered one friend in particular. A human boy with brown hair and kind eyes. He was 2 years older than her, which seemed like a huge difference when she was 8. But he never made her feel young or stupid. Instead, he taught her human games and shared his stories about Earth animals. What was his name? She had been so young, and the years had blurred many memories. But slowly, pieces came back to her. Ben. His name was Ben. Kira leaned back in her chair, overwhelmed by the flood of returning memories. She had blocked out much of her time on Earth after they left. The departure had been so painful, leaving behind her first real friend. Her parents had said it was better to forget and focus on her duties as a princess. But now the memories came rushing back like a river breaking through a dam. Ben lived with his parents in a small house near the embassy grounds. Every day after her formal lessons, Kira would sneak out to play with him. Her bodyguards knew but never told her parents. Even they could see how happy these friendships made the young princess. Ben taught her to climb trees, something impossible on her homeworld where trees grew too tall and smooth. He showed her how to skip stones on the embassy pond. Most importantly, he taught her that being different was not something to hide. "You have purple eyes," he had said during one of their first meetings. "That's amazing. Humans all have boring brown or blue eyes. My parents say I should wear contacts to look more normal around other species," Kira had replied. "Why would you want to look normal? Normal is boring. Different is special." Those words had stayed with her for 20 years, giving her confidence in diplomatic meetings and royal ceremonies. When other leaders tried to intimidate her because of her youth or appearance, she remembered Ben's words about being different and special. She remembered the day he gave her the wooden sparrow. It was her last week on Earth. They both knew she would be leaving soon, returning to her homeworld to continue her education. Neither wanted to talk about the separation. They sat by the embassy pond, throwing pieces of bread to the fish swimming below. Ben seemed unusually quiet, carving something with a small knife. "What are you making?" Kira asked. "A present. For you to remember Earth." He held up the small wooden bird. "It's a sparrow. They're my favorite birds." "Why sparrows?" "Because they're small, but they're not afraid of anything. Sparrows will chase away hawks 10 times their size if they're protecting their families. They never give up, no matter how big the enemy." He placed the carving in her hands. "I want you to be like a sparrow, Kira. Small but brave. Different but never ashamed. I'll keep it forever," she had promised. And she had. Through diplomatic crises, royal ceremonies, and 7 years of war, the wooden sparrow had never left her side. It reminded her to be brave when facing impossible challenges. Now, sitting in the archives, Kira understood why those words about sparrows had seemed so familiar when people quoted Commander Torres. He used similar phrases to inspire his troops. Stories spoke of him telling soldiers they were small but never surrender, just before the final battle at Kepler 7. Could her childhood friend Ben really have become the greatest military hero in galactic history? She pulled up more files, searching for photographs from Torres' early career. Most military records included identification photos taken during training. The image that appeared on the screen made her gasp. Even 20 years later, even though war had changed him, she recognized those eyes immediately. Brown and warm, with tiny lines at the corners that showed he still smiled often. His face was older, scarred by battle, but the basic features were the same. This was her Ben. The boy who had shared his lunch with her, taught her to climb trees, and given her the courage to be different. He had grown up to become the man who saved the galaxy. Kira sat alone in the archives for hours, reading everything about Torres' military career. Each battle report revealed more of the man she had known as a child. His refusal to abandon wounded soldiers echoed his childhood promise that friends always helped each other. His brilliant tactical mind showed traces of the boy who had invented new games for them to play. His famous speeches about unity and hope used phrases she remembered from their long talks by the embassy pond. Most importantly, his determination to protect all species equally reflected something he had told her during their last conversation. "Someday I'm going to do something important," 8-year-old Ben had said. "Something that helps people who are different, like you." "What kind of important thing?" she had asked. "I don't know yet. But I promise I'll never forget that being different makes someone special, not wrong." Now she understood. Everything Ben Torres had accomplished during the war stemmed from lessons they had learned together as children. He fought not to conquer or destroy, but to create a galaxy where different species could live together in peace. The wooden sparrow seemed to grow warm in her hands. This simple gift had connected them across 20 years and countless star systems. Every time she touched it, she had drawn strength from her friend's words about courage and determination. But Ben had carried those same lessons into battle. Every time he refused to retreat, every time he protected alien soldiers at risk to his own life, he was honoring the same values they had discovered together on Earth. As evening approached, Kira made her decision. She had to find Ben Torres and tell him what his friendship had meant to her. More than that, she had to thank him for saving not just her people, but the very idea that different species could be family. The war was over, but Kira realized her most important mission was just beginning. She had to reunite with the boy who had taught her to be brave, the man who had become her people's greatest hero. Tomorrow, she would begin the search for Commander Ben Torres. Princess Kira spent 3 sleepless nights planning how to find Ben Torres. The galaxy was vast, and war heroes often disappeared after conflicts ended. Some retired to quiet planets. Others continued serving in peacetime roles. A few simply vanished, preferring anonymity after years of fame. She started by contacting the Human Defense Force headquarters on Earth. The communication took 2 days to reach them across the light years, then 2 more days for their response to return. The message was polite but unhelpful. Commander Torres has been granted extended medical leave following injuries sustained during the Kepler-7 operation. His location is classified for security reasons. We cannot provide personal information about our personnel. Kira expected this response. Military organizations protected their heroes from unwanted attention. But she had advantages that ordinary citizens lacked. As a princess of the Valdari Empire, she commanded considerable resources. Minister Vex arranged meetings with intelligence contacts across 3 star systems. The network of spies and informants that had helped win the war now searched for one man. After a week of careful investigation, they found him. Commander Ben Torres was recovering at a private medical facility on Sanctuary Station, a neutral space platform near the Centauri system. The station specialized in treating war veterans from all species. Its remote location and strict privacy policies made it popular with former soldiers who wanted to heal away from public attention. Kira prepared for the journey immediately. She chose a small, fast ship rather than the massive royal transport that usually carried her between worlds. This mission was personal, not official. She wanted to meet Ben as a friend, not as a princess making a state visit. The flight to Sanctuary Station took 4 days. Kira spent the time reviewing everything she had learned about Ben's military career, trying to understand how the playful boy she remembered had become such a legendary commander. His first major action came during the Battle of Haven's Gate, 3 years into the war. Then Lieutenant Torres had been assigned to evacuate civilian populations from a mining colony under hegemony attack. When enemy forces arrived earlier than expected, Torres faced an impossible choice. He could retreat with his small force intact, or stay and buy time for the evacuation ships. Torres chose to fight. With only 200 soldiers, he held off 3,000 hegemony troops for 18 hours. His tactical brilliance and personal courage inspired his mixed-species unit to perform beyond all expectations. When relief forces finally arrived, they found Torres unconscious from his wounds but still directing the defense from an improvised command post. The evacuation succeeded. Over 500,000 civilians escaped to safety. Torres' actions earned him rapid promotion and recognition as a rising star in the Alliance military. But what impressed Kira most were the personal accounts from soldiers who served under Torres. They described a commander who learned every soldier's name, regardless of their species. He shared supplies equally, protected the wounded personally, and never asked his troops to take risks he wouldn't take himself. One report particularly moved her. During the siege of Proxima Base, Torres had crawled through enemy fire to rescue a wounded Zen communications officer. The rescue took 3 hours and nearly cost Torres his life. When asked later why he risked so much for one soldier, Torres replied simply, "Because leaving people behind isn't who we are." These stories revealed the same Ben she had known as a child. He had always protected smaller children from bullies in the embassy district. When Kira felt homesick or scared, Ben would sit with her until she felt better. His natural kindness had grown into military leadership that inspired loyalty across species lines. Sanctuary Station appeared on the ship's viewscreen as a gleaming wheel of metal and crystal, rotating slowly against the backdrop of distant stars. The station was enormous, capable of housing 50,000 residents. Medical facilities, recreational areas, and residential quarters were arranged in concentric rings around the central hub. Kira docked her ship and made her way through the arrival procedures. Station security was thorough but polite. They scanned her identification and noted her diplomatic status, but asked no unnecessary questions. Privacy was the station's most important service. The medical director, a kindly human woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, met Kira in her office near the station's central hub. The doctor's gray hair and gentle manner reminded Kira of her childhood tutors. "Princess Kira," Dr. Chen said, rising to greet her. "This is an unexpected honor. How can Sanctuary Station assist the Valdari royal family?" "I'm here to visit one of your patients," Kira replied. "Commander Ben Torres of the Human Defense Force. This is a personal visit, not official business." Dr. Chen's expression grew cautious. "Commander Torres values his privacy very highly. He's recovering from serious injuries and has requested no visitors except immediate family." "I understand your concern, Doctor. But I believe I am family, in a way." Kira pulled out the wooden sparrow, holding it carefully. "Ben gave this to me 20 years ago, when we were children. We were friends before he became famous." The doctor examined the carving closely. "He mentioned someone once. A young alien girl he knew on Earth. He said she taught him that friendship could cross any boundary." Dr. Chen looked up with new interest. "You're that girl, aren't you?" "Yes. I need to see him, Dr. Chen. Not as a princess meeting a war hero, but as a friend reconnecting with a friend." Dr. Chen considered for a long moment. "Commander Torres has been struggling with his recovery. Physical therapy is progressing well, but emotionally he's had difficulty adjusting to peacetime. Perhaps seeing an old friend might help." She led Kira through the medical complex toward the residential quarters where long-term patients live during extended treatment. The corridors were bright and cheerful, with viewing windows showing the rotating star field outside. "What are his injuries?" Kira asked as they walked. "Multiple fractures to his left arm and ribs, severe burns across his back, and some internal damage from energy weapon fire. The physical wounds are healing well. It's the psychological impact that concerns us." Dr. Chen paused at an intersection. "He blames himself for every soldier who didn't make it home. That sounds like the Ben I knew. He always felt responsible for everyone around him. The final battle at Kepler 7 was particularly hard on him. His tactical plan worked perfectly, but the cost was enormous. Over 3,000 Alliance soldiers died in that assault, even though it ended the war." Dr. Chen's voice grew sad. "Success and failure can feel very similar when you're the one making life and death decisions." They reached a quiet residential section with individual apartments for patients undergoing long-term care. Dr. Chen stopped outside a door marked with only a number, no name. "He's in the garden area behind his quarters. Commander Torres spends most of his time there, reading or just thinking." She handed Kira a communication device. "Call me when you're ready to leave. And Princess, please remember that he's still healing. This reunion may be emotional for both of you." Kira nodded and walked around the building to find the garden entrance. The therapeutic garden was a marvel of engineering, a large enclosed space with real earth plants growing under artificial sunlight. Trees, flowers, and grass created a peaceful environment that must have reminded human patients of home. She found Ben sitting alone on a bench beneath a large oak tree, reading from a tablet computer. He wore simple civilian clothes instead of a military uniform. His left arm was supported by a medical brace, and she could see the edge of bandages beneath his shirt collar. For a moment, Kira simply watched him. 20 years had changed the boy she remembered into a man, but she recognized his posture and the way he concentrated while reading. His brown hair was shorter now and showed streaks of premature gray. Lines around his eyes spoke of years spent squinting at tactical displays and star charts. He looked up as she approached, perhaps sensing her presence. For several heartbeats, they stared at each other in silence. Recognition dawned slowly in his brown eyes, followed by amazement and joy. "Kira," he said softly, setting aside the tablet and struggling to stand. "Is it really you?" "Hello, Ben." She held up the wooden sparrow. "I told you I'd keep it forever." His face transformed with the same crooked smile she remembered from childhood. Despite the scars and years, despite everything that had happened between then and now, her friend was still there. "You came all this way to see me?" he asked, moving closer. I came all this way to thank you, Kira replied. And to tell you something important. Ben gestured toward the bench, and they sat together under the oak tree. The artificial breeze stirred the leaves above them, creating patterns of light and shadow on the ground. 20 years, Ben said wonderfully. I thought about you sometimes, wondered how you were doing. But I never imagined you'd become a princess. I always was a princess, Ben. You just treated me like a normal person. Because to me, you were normal. You were my friend Kira who climbed trees and fed the fish and asked a million questions about everything. He smiled again. I heard you became an important diplomat. Your parents must be proud. They are. But I learned my most important lessons about diplomacy from you, not from any formal teacher. Kira turned the wooden sparrow over in her hands. You taught me that being different made me special. Do you remember? Of course. It was true then, and it's true now. That lesson changed my entire life, Ben. Every time I faced a difficult situation, every time someone tried to make me feel inferior because of my species or my age, I remembered what you said. This little sparrow reminded me to be brave. Ben looked at the carving with wonder. I can't believe you kept it all these years. But there's something else, something I only realized a few days ago. Kira took a deep breath. You didn't just teach me to be brave. You became the bravest person in the galaxy. Kira, I'm not. Let me finish. I've read every report about your military service. I know what you did during the war. You saved millions of lives, Ben. You united dozens of species in common cause. You ended a conflict that could have destroyed half the galaxy. Her voice grew thick with emotion. You became exactly what you promised you'd become. What do you mean? The last day we spent together on Earth, you said you wanted to do something important someday. Something that helped people who were different. You kept that promise in the most amazing way possible. Ben was quiet for a long time, processing her words. When he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. I never made the connection. But you're right. Everything I learned about leadership, about bringing different people together, started with our friendship. He looked at her with amazement. You taught me that species differences didn't matter. That friendship could cross any boundary. And you taught me to be brave enough to cross those boundaries myself. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the artificial wind move through the garden plants. Two children who had learned important lessons together had grown up to help heal a wounded galaxy. There's something I need to tell you, Ben said eventually. Something I've never told anyone else. Kira waited patiently. During the worst moments of the war, when everything seemed hopeless, I would think about that sparrow I carved for you. I would remember what I said about sparrows being small but never giving up. It helped me keep going when I wanted to quit. You carried the same lesson that kept me strong. We carried it together, across 20 years and thousands of light years. Ben smiled sadly. I just wish it hadn't taken a war for us to meet again. The war is over now, Kira said firmly. And we found each other. That's what matters. They spent the rest of the afternoon talking, sharing stories from the years they had been apart. Kira told Ben about her diplomatic missions, the challenges of royal life, and her efforts to improve relations between the Valdari and other species. Ben described his military training, the friends he had made and lost, and the weight of command during humanity's first galactic war. As the artificial sun began to set in a garden sky, Ben asked the question that had been growing in both their minds. What happens now, Kira? You have a kingdom to help rule, and I have to figure out what a soldier does when there are no more wars to fight. I have an idea about that, Kira said. The galaxy needs healing now. All these species that fought together, they need to learn how to live together in peace. We need people who understand that being different is valuable, not threatening. You mean diplomacy? I mean partnership. The Valdari Empire wants to establish a new galactic council, a place where all species can work together as equals. We need leaders who prove themselves during the war, people that others trust and respect. Ben understood immediately. You're offering me a position. I'm offering you a chance to keep helping people who are different. To build the kind of galaxy we dreamed about as children. Ben looked at the wooden sparrow still resting in Kira's hands. The small carving had connected them across time and space, a symbol of courage that had sustained them both through their darkest moments. On one condition, he said finally. What's that? We do it together. No more 20-year separations. Kira smiled, the first truly joyful expression she had felt since the war began. I wouldn't have it any other way. As they walked back toward the medical complex, planning their shared future, the wooden sparrow seemed to catch the last rays of artificial sunlight. Small but never surrendering, it had brought two friends back together at exactly the right moment. The boy who had learned courage and the girl who had learned to embrace her differences would now work together to build a peaceful galaxy. Their childhood friendship, tested by time and distance, had grown into something that would benefit billions of lives. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to prove that being different truly was special. But tonight, two old friends were simply grateful to have found each other again.